statistics tell a tragic story. The rates of unemployment, imprisonment, and early death for Aboriginal Canadians are disproportionately higher than the national averages. In his book, Fireworks and Folly, How We Killed Minnie Sutherland, Ottawa author John Nihmey puts a human face on those statistics. It's the compelling story of a 40-year-old Cree woman from Northern Ontario who came to Ottawa to make a new life.
Minnie was an urban Aboriginal who didn't want to stay on reserve, and that was her right as a Canadian. So the system she came into here was the system she wanted to be part of. It's too bad that the system isn't really set up to protect everyone equally. It says it is, but the system's made up of all of us, and I don't know how ready all of us are to embrace everybody that comes into the city. Minnie Sutherland was a 40-year-old Cree woman originally from James Bay, Ontario, a reserve called Saskatchewan. And she had moved to Ottawa originally in 1966 and lived here on and off for 20 years. This is Mechanicsville in Ottawa, south of the river. The area has a high proportion of unemployed and destitute people, some transient people. And Minnie lived here at 18 Lowry Street. She moved here in September 1987. She had just come back from Toronto after having had a rough time. She had been drinking a lot, recovered from that, had lived on the street and been homeless for a period of time, and came back to Ottawa. She loved living in Ottawa, and she had friends here, and she felt quite good about it. When she came here, she had difficulty getting a job because of her eyesight. She was legally blind. She got a job, though, through a program called Salem for recovering alcoholics. The funding ran out on that program, though, in the summer of 1988, and she lost the job. So the last 3 months of her life, she spent a lot of her time just sitting here in her apartment and started drinking again and feeling quite destitute and lonely. On December 31st, 1988, Minnie was resigned to staying in her apartment here at 18 Lowry Street. She had no money. She had no plans to go out. She made a lot of calls, and a lot of people called her Happy New Year. She talked to both her children. Her older daughter was living in Timmins, her younger daughter with the rest of the family in Saskatchewan. And it was later that evening that a friend, Evelyn Mark, who lived in Vanier, called, and they decided they should do something. So they decided to go out that evening to see the fireworks display. Minnie would take the bus over to Vanier, and then they would go over and see the fireworks display by bus. And so that was the plan for that evening. Evelyn said that Susie was going to come along, a friend of Evelyn's, and that they would meet her at Claude Tavern. Well, where I'm standing right now is where Claude Tavern once stood, and it burned down in 1993. A lot of native people had come here. There was quite a collection that would always appear here on weekend nights, and they had a big splash for New Year's Eve, 1988. And that's when Minnie saw her cousin Joyce, who was also from Saskatchewan. And they decided they would all sit together, Evelyn, Joyce. There was this Inuit man named Sam who seemed to have lots of money with him, and he was buying drinks for everybody. And they sat there and they had a really good time. Minnie reconciled herself that it was better than staying at home in her apartment, even though she hadn't gone to see the fireworks. They left a little after 1, and Sam offered to pay for a cab if anybody wanted to go over to Hull, where the bar stayed open until 3 o'clock. Hull is on the north side of the Ottawa River, and for many years has been considered Ottawa's playground, for about 100 years actually. When Minnie visited the Hull Strip, it was New Year's Eve, so there were thousands of people here. The streets were full, the bars were full. In a few short blocks, you've got 20-some bars and dance halls, and the place was teeming with excitement. They spent about an hour here at JR Dallas, which is now Ozone. It's actually closed now, but it was JR Dallas back in 1988. And they spent about an hour there, and at 3:30, when the lights were turned on, the music was turned off, Minnie and her friends had dispersed, and the idea was that one of them would get a cab and they'd find their way home. So they left, and they were out here on the road with thousands of people who were trying to get the 50 cabs that are always situated here at the four corners. Minnie had just crossed over from the median, crossed through this lane, and she was on the north side of the street when a car coming along this way hit her. Minnie went flat down on the road, and then a crowd of people started gathering around her.
So we ran out into the middle of the road and started looking into what was going on, and the two girls who were in the car that struck, who we later found out was Minnie Sutherland, informed us that they were nurses. So we backed off and observed, and the police arrived shortly thereafter.
The police started insisting that everybody just leave to disperse the scene.
When we saw that they were telling the girls to get in the car and leave, I mean, it was just absolute disbelief. So we're approaching the officer saying, "Why are you, what are you doing? This is illegal. You can't just tell these girls to leave the scene of an accident."